First things first, so we're joined by former All-Pro running back Brian Westbrook. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
See you.
Good morning. I like that blue that you got on.
Oh,
brother.
thank you very much.
That's good. That's good.
Got a bunch of well-dressed men here.
You're doing the same thing all the time, looking good. Clean as the Board of Health.
It's the Board of Health. Casket clean. In case I die, go ahead and bury me.
Brian, your Eagles picked up a big win in Week 4, putting them right back in the mix in the NFC East. And while Carson Wentz's numbers won't blow you away, the team's many dropped passes aren't doing him any favors either. Taking that into account, Pro Football Focus ranks Wentz as the top quarterback through 4 weeks of play. Brian, what are your impressions of Wentz this season? But first, what is your reaction to that?
Whoa. Now, I think we're all clear on who's the best quarterback in the league.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brent. Are they just trying to run people away?
No, they're trying to give us something to talk about. That's what we're doing here. We're bringing them up. Every time they say something like that, we bring up Pro Football Focus, and that's what it's all about. But obviously the best quarterback in the league is Patrick Mahomes. I think everybody understands that, especially after that comeback win last week. But Carson Wentz, after not playing in the preseason, is getting a little bit better every single game. I think the game is slowing down for him. He's understanding defenses a little bit more. He's understanding where the holes in the defenses are. And he's doing all of this without Deshaun Jackson for the last 3 games. And I think that's really, really key. When you talk about the Detroit game before the Packers game, 7 drops, that hurts you as far as statistically. He just can't get it done. The one thing that you don't have without Deshaun is that ability to stretch the football. That means now Alshon has to find a way to get open when he gets healthy. Obviously, he was not healthy last week. Zach Ertz has to play a bigger role. And I think all those things are going to help Carson Wentz. But right now, the one thing that I think is plaguing Carson the most is not being able to perform in the first quarter. That first quarter of football, he has 0 touchdowns. He has to be able to start a lot faster. That means Doug Peterson has to start faster. That offensive line has to start faster. And when you look at it, in this Packers game, they were able to run the football early. That allowed Doug to open up this offense just a bit. That allowed Carson to get more comfortable, and that offensive line played much better, especially in that first quarter. If they can do all those things, then you can put Carson in the mix for one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL.
So, listen, I think Carson Wentz has been better than his numbers suggest. I think particularly in the Week 3 game, you saw him, he made a bunch of plays that just were not fulfilled by his wide receivers. You saw him make a bunch of, that was the game where you had the 7 drops. He had the Dallas Goedert dropped a touchdown. You had Nelson Aguilar. That was the game where my man caught the baby out of the building, so they didn't drop him like Aguilar. I mean, so I think Wentz is better than his numbers suggest. And for whatever it's worth, Pro Football Focus, it's not just some guy making a list. They have a formula, they have an algorithm, they input their data, and it spits this out. What I would say to them is, if you input the data and the quarterback in the NFL who's #1 in rating, touchdowns, yards, and yards per attempt is behind the quarterback in the NFL who's 19th, 4th, 17th, and 26th in those same categories, maybe tweak the algorithm a bit. But for the bigger picture, I don't think Wentz has been the problem. I don't even think he's been a big part of the problem. I think the problem's been the units on the Eagles that were supposed to be great, offensive line and defensive line in particular, have not been great, and they've been dealing with injury. On defensive line, the players alongside Fletcher Cox. You lose Malik Jackson, then you lose Timmy Jernigan. So where your depth that we said was going to be so great, it starts to get questioned. But your point about Wentz in the beginning of games, it's something I keyed on as well. And the question I'd have to you guys, 2 great offensive players, is how much of that first quarter is, we always hear it talked about, the scripted first 15 plays, that you talked teams getting out to a fast start because the coach has a game plan in place for that specific opponent that is not really a game, game situation specific, because it's 0-0 or it's 3-0. It's the beginning of football games. Doug Peterson had excelled with that in the past. The Eagles offense had excelled with that in the past. How much of that is on the coach rather than the quarterback, these slow starts?
I'll take the first part of that. Let's just go to, because a lot of this just breaks down game by game. We've only played 4 games, so it's really not enough. It's only 4 quarters of football. 2 of those being on the road, 1 being in Atlanta, one of the tougher places to play, the other one at Lambeau Field. So if I don't score a touchdown in those 2 places, there's no reason to be alarmed. First game of the season, Washington gets out to a start. Now, we didn't have a lot of continuity during preseason, so to say in quarter #1, game #1, we're going to struggle, yes, it's the NFL. It's difficult. So that part right there. So for me, I'm like you, Nick. I think Carson Wentz has performed a lot better. 8 drops in 2 games. Nelson Aguilar, The ball hit him in his face mask going down the sideline in the Atlanta game. And then we know the game after that, everyone was
the Detroit game.
Everyone was dropping the ball. What type of effect that has on the continuity of the offense and the psyche of the quarterback. So for me, Carson Wentz, he's had one of the better seasons, given that after D-Jack has gone out the lineup, you need to understand this about NFL, and it's called respect. If two guys run a 4-3, one guy don't have a resume, other guy got a resume, you know what the defense does? I'm going to put a safety over top for D-Jack, especially after the way he destroyed Washington in the first game with those deep passes, 2 touchdowns over 50 yards. They don't have that respect factor out there. So even though they got speed on the field, it's not the same effect on the defense. So Carson, every week, he's adjusting. Who's in the lineup? Alshon. He's out. Okay, so now what do I do? Nelson Aguilar, a couple games, was the featured receiver, and we know, B, he is not that. So it's been a tough 4 weeks for him as far as continuity. To me, he's playing some very good football.
Continuity is huge. Speed is even better. When you look at teams like Kansas City, no matter who they put in at the wide receiver position, speed is coming off that bench. And so Carson doesn't have that. The one guy that had speed was Deshaun Jackson. He's been gone for 3 weeks. All these other guys are more possession types of guys. That means Zach Ertz has to play a bigger role. The hard part about Zach Ertz is that most defenses are now saying, okay, we're going to double team Ertz and make you throw the ball to Aguilar, make you win with Mac Hollins, throw the ball to Alshon with him clearly not being healthy. Carson has to find a different way. The good thing for Carson is this. He has the arm talent to make every throw in the book. So that means he can figure things out with his arm. I think the game has slowed down. He's understanding defenses a little bit better, understanding where the coverage, where the safeties are moving just a bit. But he also has the ability to roll out, use his legs, and make plays down the field. When you have those things, I think those types of talents at the quarterback position usually figure it out, and I think he will continue to do that.
And the other good thing for that Week 4 game against Green Bay, other than the win, obviously, and these two are probably tied together, is they ran the ball incredibly effectively, and because of that, it was the first game all year Carson Wentz wasn't sacked. It was the first game all year he was pressured on less than 15% of his dropbacks. The best thing for Carson Wentz right now is through the first month of the season, seems healthy. He's not dealing with anything. That was our biggest question with Carson Wentz going into this season. In order for him to stay healthy, that running game and that offensive line have to continue to play better so it's not all on him like it was in that Atlanta game, which was, to me, even though maybe they could have wanted if Aguilar catches that pass down the sideline, that was his only really bad game of the year. That was the only game where you say, if Carson Wentz plays better, Philadelphia wins. That wasn't the case in Detroit. I feel like that was the case against Atlanta.
I agree with you. I think right now, whatever the Eagles are dealing with, the organization will probably say, well, right now he's healthy. Let's just build from there and move forward. All right, Brian, stick around. Coming up, can the Seahawks escape their Thursday night matchup with the Rams as the kings of the NFC? That's next. This is First Things First.